Hello, film freaks, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Film Session, coming to you a day after the New York Knicks put a hurting on the Orlando Magic 121-106 in a game that wasn't that close. Knicks likely would have scored in the mid 130s had they kept their starters in and run through the finish line. But it was a highly impressive performance by these New York Knicks on both sides of the ball, and that will be the theme of today's session. We'll get into how the Knicks were able to score effectively on offense and how they were able to take advantage of some of the weak points on the Orlando Magic on the defensive end to shut down their offense and hold Franz Wagner in check. For the most part, he did score a decent amount of points, but it was the way he got those points and the way he was unable to get his teammates involved, where I thought the Knicks really did a nice job. The Knicks are now have 124 offensive rating against the Boston Celtics, 124 offensive rating against the Orlando Magic. They put up a 139 offensive rating at Phoenix and a 123 offensive rating at Miami. So the Knicks are slowly but surely racking up some nice offensive performances against solid to very good to great defenses. And we know that that is the sort of barometer that we're going to really hold this Knicks offense to, which has been historically good. How do they perform against the best defenses? Now, I will say I was a little surprised at the lack of aggression in terms of the switching aspect of it in terms of the Orlando Magic. It was a basic defense, a lot of drop coverage, and Knicks did a good job of taking advantage of that. So, without further ado, let's just get into how it all went down. Let's get into the tape and see how the Knicks were able to perform so well on both sides of the ball. Now, we're going to start on the offensive end. The Knicks have traditionally this season run this set. It's going to be basically in their chin series. You're going to see a chin cut with Brunson and Towns. So he's going to cut through. And basically, this initial action is just going to set up their motion strong offense. This has been a very common set the Knicks have run this season. So Brunson and Towns are now going to set a stagger screen for Anunoby, who's going to reject it. And now here's where it gets interesting. Brunson is going to come over, and he's basically going to act as if he's going to set a flex screen for Bridges, another decoy, because what Brunson is going to do is slip that. And the Knicks are going to flow into their gut Chicago. So gut Chicago is basically what we is similar to a zoom action, but it's going to come from the middle of the floor. So as Brunson comes through, here's your pin down. Your pin down typically on a zoom action traditionally is going to come from the far corners. Brunson comes over. He's going to get that DHO. And then what the Knicks have been doing this year, and they've added this wrinkle of this back screen from Josh Hart to Wendell Carter. And that's going to basically cause a lot of confusion for the Orlando Magic and put a lot of stress on Franz to come over and help, because Wendell Carter is very much out of position here. And you can see how the Knicks take advantage of it. So as Brunson comes off the screen, he's got a lot of space here to get downhill. And that's exactly what Franz is seeing. He's seeing Brunson with a head of steam. He knows that Wendell Carter is in no position to help at this point, because he's got to worry about if Towns is going to pop this, if he's switching, if he's going to switch on to Hart. So that puts the defense in a very precarious position. So as Wagner comes over, you could see how out of position Wendell Carter is. So as Franz comes over and he's going to help on this drive, that's going to leave KCP here, and he's got OG in the corner, and he's got Bridges on the wing. So he's zoning up. And this is very common weak side responsibility when you have help defense, you have two on the ball or multiple defenders on the strong side. That's the responsibility of KCP. But what Bridges does, and his cutting has been very impressive this year. So as he cuts, KCP is unable to deter that, and he gets right into his sweet spot, a nice jump stop into the short mid-range, and the Knicks are on the board. Really nice set by the Knicks. But it really was the defensive side of the ball that the Knicks did, I thought, a really, really nice job here. Now, this is a very simple thing, but this is one of the aspects of Mikal Bridges' defense that I loved before he came to the Knicks. We were doing all our prep work to see what kind of player we were actually getting. He's very good at getting up a high hand early to disrupt the visual of the offensive player. So as we get almost like a hammer action here on the weak side, Suggs is going to flash into the corner. Bridges does a good job of reading that, running with him, and you can see he gets his right hand up very early. That hand is already up, and he's trying to disrupt the visual of Suggs. Hand stays up, solid contest, and we get a miss. Magic at this point had hit 3 threes in the game. I think they were up three of 3 to start. So a nice shot contest by Mikal Bridges to force that miss. We're going to stick here on the defensive end. And what you love to see is the physicality of OG Anunoby. I thought the decision to have OG guard Franz was the right one. Franz is 6'10". He's a physical driver. He's a patient driver. Once he gets his head and shoulders ahead of you, it's really tough to get back in front and contest on his pick and roll forays into the lane. Here, we're going to get a stagger away and just watch the physicality by OG Anunoby. He's right up and he basically knocks. I mean, he is extremely physical here. Now, Franz is probably selling this a little bit, but there is no room here to come over and get a clean catch, which is what they're trying to do. Either he's going to curl it or they're going to run some sort of pick and roll action once he catches it. But OG Anunoby is extremely physical. Again, knocks back Franz, who's going to ghost that screen a little bit. And now we're going to get a little 2-man action. And what you like, and this is a theme, and will be a theme. Josh Hart in most of these possessions was guarding one of the weaker shooters on the floor. And the Magic, and this is something that they're going to have to figure out and try to deter teams from doing this, but he really did a good job of playing in the gaps and forcing some weak shooters to get shots up. And this was a nice case in point here. Again, no driving angle. He knows he has at best, an average shooter on the above the break, 2-3 feet behind the line. He knows that his primary objective here is to keep Franz out of the lane where he can really do some damage. So Josh Hart playing gaps and providing help is going to be a major theme as we go through this. So he just forces the kick out. And that's just not going to be an efficient look for the Orlando Magic, especially this year where Jalen Suggs has really struggled from the 3-point line. Now on the offensive end, wasn't a great first half for Jalen Brunson, but he had a couple of opportunities where he was able to get into the lane for some floaters. Good screen by Cat, gets Suggs on Jalen Brunson's back, and now you're going to see what the gravity of Karl-Anthony Towns can provide. So as you play this through, you're going to get a lot of visual manipulation here by Jalen Brunson. Wendell Carter is in drop. He's got Cat popping, and he's got Jalen Brunson getting downhill with an advantage with, again, Jalen Suggs on his back. It's a tough position to be when you're playing drop coverage and you have an elite shooter in Karl-Anthony Towns popping this pick and roll, and Jalen Brunson being so good manipulating him with his eyes and getting to an advantageous situation here. So right there, that in and out dribble. I mean, you have to, I'm going to bring that back a little bit. You can actually see Brunson with his eyes. He's looking at Towns right here. So Wendell Carter, he sees that Brunson has Towns in his sight, and he can't give up this open three. And it just puts him in a really unfortunate position. So as Brunson, again, uses patience, manipulation, and then he's got a clear lane to the basket with Wagner as your rim protector. And what Jalen does as good as any guard in the league is that he rarely gets all the way to the basket. What he likes to do is sort of finish right about this area, because as shot blockers come over to help, they're helping at the rim, usually just outside the restricted area. And Jalen Brunson does a good job of taking his floaters, his layups a little bit outside that restricted area to limit the impact of the shot blocker. And that's what he does here. Nice floater, nice finish. Knicks offense doing a nice job of getting their best players in the action and getting downhill. Now let's see more OG Anunoby defense on Wagner. Now, what I like about what the Knicks did, and it was something I called out before the game, where I thought drop coverage was where the Knicks needed to go against Franz Wagner in terms of his ability to get in the lane and just pick apart a defense with his passing and his finishing. In the previous game, the Orlando Magic played the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets employed a much more aggressive pick and roll coverage. Franz was often able to get into the lane. And then you had just basically a parade of lobs and finishes at the basket. So the Knicks with OG Anunoby and with Cat and Drop did a good job, and we'll go through this, of trying to limit some of the playmaking opportunities for Franz and live with some of the 2-point field goal attempts, which, listen, Franz scored, but the Orlando Magic as a team did not score very well when he was on the floor. And that's because he was only able to get for himself. The assists that he did get, a lot of them came late in the game when the game was already in doubt. I thought the Knicks, when the game mattered, did a really nice job. Let's go through this one. Again, OG going under the screen, fighting through. And what the Knicks are doing here is that they're putting the onus on Wendell Carter Jr. So Towns is in drop. He's not that concerned about Wendell Carter popping out to the 3-point line. Now, what Wendell Carter Jr. has been taught, and what a lot of bigs, you'll see this with the Knicks, with Sims, is that if you get a big that is playing off you, just get right into a DHO. The advantage there is that if you can get in it, you get your player some room going over the handoff. The big is not going to be in great position to help because he's playing off. So Wendell Carter is going to flow into a DHO with Suggs. And Bridges does a nice job of getting back in the play. Now he's initially screened off, and Suggs does get an initial advantage coming off the screen. So it's not picture perfect defense by Bridges, but he does a good job of getting back in the play and getting back on the hip of Suggs. And again, if you're in drop coverage, the shot you want to give up is that one. And Towns does a really nice job of just being huge and big with a two-handed rebound. Physical. His rebounding has been phenomenal this year. It was one of the things I loved about him in Minnesota, is that he was a legitimate two-handed high point rebounder. And that skill has certainly translated with the New York Knicks. Now we go back on the offensive end as the Knicks go in transition, and Bridges had a couple of nice corner passes to Anunoby in 1.5 court, and this one in transition, streaking down the lane. That is a tough pass to make to avoid the charge. And Anunoby makes his first three after going through a couple of games where he did not shoot the ball well. Now, this was a really impressive defensive rep by the Knicks, and specifically OG Anunoby and Karl-Anthony Towns. So you're going to get this empty side pick and roll. So again, we have no corner filled, empty side. Magic trying to get Franz into the lane. Towns and drop. Knicks icing it to that side of the court. And this is where the strength and the ability of Anunoby to stay physical, stay attached, and then eventually get back in front. That's the key. Get back in front. Towns is doing a nice job of not allowing Wendell Carter Jr. to get behind him for any sort of lob attempt. and there. So you get basically 2 on the ball, but there's just no passing window here. And if you look at the court itself, the Knicks, especially Hart, he's really shrinking down. He's got basically 2 feet in the lane. Bridges is not worried about De Silva here at the weak side corner. There's just not a lot of playmaking options for Franz here, and the scoring options are limited based on where Cat is positioned, and Anunoby getting back in front. So he's now in front of the play. And basically any advantage the Magic had has been nullified. Knicks are back to basically a neutral position. Now, Franz is basically going to try to lob this over. I'm not sure if OG gets a tip on it. It's a tough catch, and then Josh Hart comes flying in for the steal. Just elite 2-man defense. And it's, I thought, the strategy that needed to be used. But you can do it. You can use the right strategy, but if you're not executing it to this high a degree, it's really not going to matter too much. So excellent defensive rep, one of many for the Knicks. And in transition, it's another Hart push. You get Towns with a lot of space here. And I sent this over on X. And of course, you guys can follow me at DJ Ace NBA. You get a double gap here for Towns. His turnover percentage this year has gone from 14% last year to 10% this year. And he's seen the largest decrease in turnovers per 75 possessions in the NBA among players that have played at least 600 games. Whether it's the spacing or whether that's the principles of the head coach, something has influenced Towns to lower his turnovers. I think the spacing obviously would be your number one cause for that decrease. But when you have a situation where you don't have to worry about Rudy Gobert being in the lane somewhere, you don't have to worry about maybe a poor shooter playing on the wing and allowing a defender to maybe, if you had a player here and that player is not a great shooter, your defender can be right in this gap and really affect your dribbles into the lane. Knock the ball away. There's no one there. It's a double gap. So there's no one pass away on that right-hand side. So he's got a right-hand dribble and it's a finish. Just a phenomenal driving game for Towns against the Magic. Back on the defensive end, I just thought this was interesting. So Towns has the drive. He obviously sees something that he's liking in terms of his ability to get to the rim. So on this offensive foul, typically McBride and Sims coming together, Hart and Towns sit. Towns actually motions to the bench. Like, just no, give me one more. One more. He puts the one hand up, and Tom Thibodeau agrees, keeps him in the game. You can see Sims on the sideline waiting to come in. So I like the trust that Tibbs puts in his player to allow him to stay in. And on the next possession, we're going to get another 2-man game. Good screen by Towns. Black came in the game and was just getting screened all over the place. A lot of separation, a lot of ability for Brunson to get downhill. Keep an eye on here. This is your tag man. This is your low man. He's the one that's got to prevent this roll to the rim. And as Brunson, who has gotten so much better with this pass over the last couple of years, it's a little pocket pass. You could do this with Karl-Anthony Towns. If it's Mitchell Robinson, if it's Sims, the odds of them putting the ball on the floor and making a play, likely not going to happen. So this short roll with Towns can be a pass, can be a kick out for a 3, but it can also be this, where you're just one dribble and you're at the rim. Franz didn't even dribble on this one. Let's see. That is a couple of giant strides here. Yeah, just catches and goes. Huge strides, just a phenomenal athlete. I hear if you're a point guard in the NBA or at any level, and you're running screen and roll offense, it is not only the job of your screener to create the separation. Let's watch what Jalen does here. Boom. That punch creates the separation. Now you have a situation where Brunson's got the advantage. Screen has not even been set yet, and Brunson already is in position here to make a play. Towns rolls, again, empty side. Brunson has Black exactly where he wants him. Gets to do his floater range in a bucket. Good physicality. It's craft, strength, and then the finishing, the touch. He's got the entire package as a pick and roll operator, scoring, and he's starting to develop more craft and playmaking ability as a passer. Just growing into one of the best, if not the best, offensive guard in the league, running pick and roll. And he's got a hell of a partner now in Karl-Anthony Towns. That is for sure. All right. So I just want to quickly go through this one. Just an impressive play. I'm sure most of us watching saw OG Anunoby isolating with Jonathan Isaac, and we're not expecting a positive outcome. Knicks somehow performed really well when Isaac was on the defensive end, especially guarding the shooter. But this is just a really nice step through by OG Anunoby, almost a slow motion, but is able to finish. Had to put that one in there to give props to OG. And here's just Deuce McBride coming in the game and just being an absolute microwave. Elite shooter, but it's this sort of play where it's not an easy catch and shoot. It's just, we're going to get a step back. Deuce McBride at 6'1" with a 6'10" player on him. And this is where the elite release point comes into play. Let's bring that back a little bit. I mean, this is just, he jumps so high and he's got that two motion release point where you can't contest that any better. You get a little space off the step back and then the high release point. He's again 6'1", but he probably shoots it, his release point, like a guy 4 or 5 inches taller, and is coming right off the bench and just making shots like that. Awesome shooter and an incredible developmental story. All right, 31-25. We're still in the first quarter. Knicks offense playing really well. We get a nice veer back switch here where you're going to get a pick and roll, cat and drop. He's going to, instead of getting back to the pop or the roll, he's staying on the driver, and Campaign is going to veer back and he's going to take the pop, I think, in this case. So as we play that through, Cat does a good job of staying with Black. And then here again, how the Knicks have weaponized Josh Hart in this game. This is the man he's guarding. And you typically want to stay attached to the strong side corner, but you can just see where Josh Hart is positioned, a foot in the paint. He has an objective, and that objective is to disrupt drivers to the basket. Boom. Swipes at the ball, likely got a piece of it, and it's a turnover. Josh Hart playing in gaps and in help was phenomenal the entire game. All right, Knicks run their pistol action here, which is going to set up their stagger away for Bridges. So Bridges is going to, and this is just the Knicks playing in some flow here. So Bridges is going to come off a couple of stagger screens here and try to get into this area for maybe a little mid-range shot. It's a very common action they run for him. The Magic do a really good job of guarding this. Isaac sees it coming, closes the space down, almost forces the turnover, And now it's just a little chaos, but Cameron Payne and McBride developing that chemistry. Simple give and go. Kick to Bridges, open three. They all ended up calling it a 2 at a foot on the line, but just on a broken play, Knicks able to still generate a wide open 3-point shot. Just team chemistry. All right. Again, Josh Hart. I'm going to keep saying his name, and I know OG, rightfully so, got a lot of praise for how he defended. Hart's in the paint. He's guarding Jonathan Isaac. He doesn't care if Jonathan Isaac catches this ball for an open three. Shuts down the drive. Shuts it down. Wide open Jonathan Isaac. Knicks do not care. You give Tom Thibodeau some weak points on an offense. There's not a better coach in the NBA than him in terms of taking advantage of that. Knicks, he did it time and time again in this game against Orlando. McBride, again, we talked about this earlier with KCP. So as Hart comes over, McBride is reading the eyes of Karl-Anthony as he sees Anthony make that pass to the corner. Just picks it off. Knicks going the other way. And just a really nice finish by Cameron Payne, expecting contact. Nice job by Anthony Black to defend at the rim, going backwards. That's the way you want to do it. You don't get called for the foul, and you make the shot attempt much tougher. That's a phenomenal finish. Timeout, Orlando. Energy in the crowd. Campaign has been a revelation this year, especially on the offensive end. Back on defense, OG, again, guarding the ball. Talk about gap help, right? Knicks are not going to allow straight line drives. You could see they're almost defending Franz like he is, Giannis or some of these other giant ball handlers that can just cause havoc in the paint, because they know there just isn't enough out there with him to make them pay for how much they're loading up. So as Franz makes this drive to his left, there's just nowhere to go. Now it's possible you can see what the Magic are good at is Goga, who didn't play, which was a break for the Knicks, and Isaac are both really good at cutting to the rim for lobs. Now Hart gets a little sleepy here. You can see as Isaac cuts, that place possibly open. It would be a very tough pass to make. Probably doesn't have the angle to actually throw this pass. So we get a get action here where he's going to pitch it to his brother to try to get it back. But again, OG, ball denial. And we get a switch. So now Hart's back in guarding position. Run it back. So OG physical, denies the DHO. Towns switches on to the Franz. Hart shuts down the action with Isaac, and Towns has a one-on-one matchup with Wagner and forces a really tough 3-point shot, and it's a 24-second violation. Again, loading up help in the gaps, making it tough on the one primary playmaker on the Magic, and forcing the ancillary pieces to make plays. And the Magic didn't do that enough to win the game. Here's this one I thought was, again, I love set pieces as much as the next guy, but this is just Towns reading the play and getting Josh Hart a layup. So he's looking at Josh Hart here, and he's just telling him like that with his thumb, like there's a drive going to your left hand if you want it. Let me set the screen so you could drive left, and let's get a shot at the rim here. So he sets the screen. Again, he's seeing all this space. for Hart to get to his dominant hand, which is his left hand. And when Hart gets to his left hand, what's he want to do? Get back to his right hand with his swing step finish. So he's got all this space to manipulate. Good screen by Towns. Nice drive by Hart. Now Isaac is a perfect candidate to use his swing step finish because he's moving this way, and Hart's swing step, which is basically crossing over your inside foot, basically across the body of the defender to get back to the right side of the rim in this case. And that's what Hart, that's his favorite finish. And that's what he does here. There's that inside foot. It's right here. So his left foot, it crosses right in front of the defender. And then you're going to get a finish off the right foot, off the right leg on the right side of the rim. There we go. It's an awesome finish. Towns just reads it. Reads that there's a opportunity for his guy to get downhill. Swing step. And that's just an elite finish by one of the best finishers in the NBA this season, Josh Hart. All right. Offense mismatches happen, switches happen, and it's the way you attack it. Macri in the postgame show called this play out. It was a really nice call out because it was the Knicks weaponizing the team's switching against them in a way that just makes sense. So we're going to get another chin cut here for Hart to cut through. First read here is Hart cutting, and then Towns finding him for a layup. Magic don't want that, so they're going to switch it. And Hart counters by sealing Karl-Anthony. There's a seal. And this is the beauty of having Karl-Anthony Towns, is that he's out here. Rim protection is with him. And it's no one in the paint. So if Hart catches this ball, it's a likely finish. Towns sees it, lobs it over, get a hold, and Knicks get a foul out of it. Just a nice read by both Hart and Towns. Back on the offense, little DHO. You get a two-man game with OG. Again, keeping connection on Franz, cat and drop. Karl-Anthony. Again, do the Knicks care about this skip pass? Go ahead. You can make the pass. But are we worried about the shot? Because look where campaign is situated. But in this case, Cat is just going to wall up nicely and get a nice block. Probably the best defensive game of the season for Towns, and by far his best as a drop defender. Knicks needed it, and he was up for the challenge. All right, we get more OG on Franz, and watch Josh Hart again. Right in the driving gap. So there's just nowhere. You look at this. If you're Franz, you're being shaded to this side. Where's the drive? And that is just picture perfect defensive alignment, because you are, as a defense, you don't care. You just don't care. You don't care. So you are going to load up help against the one threat on offense. And now the Magic, they see this, so they're gonna cut Suggs through, because Hart will go with him, and that'll free up a driving lane for your best player. So there's a cut through, and Hart just point switches it. Bridges goes with Suggs. Hart is more than capable of zoning up this area. So if the pass goes De Silva, he can get out to that shot in plenty of time. But his primary objective is to be in this gap. He needs to deter the right-hand drive. And that's exactly what he's doing. Franz takes the drive because, again, OG is doing his job by shading him into that area. Knicks have a triangle. They have basically created just a hellscape of a driving lane for Franz to try to make a play into. He drives into it, and he makes the right pass, the kick out to the corner, and it's even a really, really good shot contest. So Hart, if you a lesser defender, is maybe going to do his job. He contained the drive. He forced the kick out, but Hart flies back out, and that's a really good shot contest, and it's a miss. Awesome defense. More on that defensive end. And we get more gap help. And this is the theme. So I can't reiterate it enough of how well the Knicks executed this game plan. Franz was going to get his points, but what you didn't want was him getting in the paint, driving kick, getting layups, getting dunks for his teammates to create energy, because that's what, the ball creates energy. And if it's just Franz getting in the lane and scoring for himself or trying to get himself involved, it's just going to limit how much the other players are in the game mentally. Excuse me. So again, Knicks have that triangle, gap help. There's just nowhere to go. Tries a little step back. He thinks he can just get a nice little back cut. And typically against your normal defender, you can cut this with the OG flying out to try to contest the step back. But 6'8", 7-foot wingspan, OG can recover and just get a hand on the ball. Now he doesn't get the steal, unfortunately, but that ability, again, no driving angle. Little step back. Nope. I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna have an open opportunity here. 7-foot wingspan says no. Again, possession not done. You got to close the possession. Jalen Brunson, good job. Make KCP a playmaker. Run him off the line. Now, Josh Hart, run this guy off the line. Make him a playmaker, and you get a steal. What did the Knicks do here on this possession? Let's recap it. You take away the drive. You have the one awesome offensive player on the team. You've taken away the first drive. Reset. You've deflected the second cut. Now the Magic are just trying to get something, and now you have two, mediocre to poor playmakers trying to make a play, and the Knicks get the steal. Execution. All right. Karl-Anthony Towns as the driver. We talked about the turnover rate being down this year. I do want to mention in the early part of the game, you can audibly hear Mosley, the head coach of the Magic, yelling, watch the keeper, because he is very cognizant of Towns as a playmaking hub, keeping these DHOs and getting all the way to the basket. So Brunson's coming over. You basically can do a couple of, you can just hand the ball off to Brunson here, because he's coming off, he's getting it to Towns, he's coming around. Little get action, very common action in the NBA. Nope. Towns is driving this downhill. No rim protector. Why? The rim protector is guarding the 7-foot guy getting all the way to the basket. Magic run a little step-up screen. We've talked about step-up screens a lot in these sessions. If you set a screen on the outer third of the court, typically set flat, where the defender or the offensive player can go in either direction. That's a step-up screen. So Suggs sets one on Bridges. forces Brunson to momentarily pick up. And that was the play. I think the Knicks got to stop there, but I think I clipped that one a little too early. So we're in the second half. Our guy Benji Ritholtz clipped this one on X. Josh Hart, who was involved in this play on the defensive end, actually quote tweeted this one. So shout out Benji, shout out Josh Hart. Just the three wings on the Knicks shutting down this action and forcing, again, a turnover. Josh Hart just in the action all game long. Phenomenal job. Thought this was where the Knicks get in rotation a little bit. You're not going to hear the audio, but Brunson at this point is yelling at Towns to get out. And he means get out to the shooter. It's just Brunson. He knows that Anunoby is closing here. It's just too long a rotation for Brunson to get out to the shooter in the corner. So he's yelling, Towns, get out, get out. Towns hears him, runs out, runs him off the 3-point line. Brunson obviously is going to be aware of this because he is initiating that rotation. So he's helping the helper at the rim, and then Bridges sinks down and gets the steal. This is what happens when you are forcing mediocre to weak playmakers to make plays with the ball. You get turnovers. Again, Towns is a driver. Turnover percentage is down. You don't have to worry about Rudy Gobert anymore. That's just elite. All right, pump fake, rip through, left-hand dribble, left-hand finish, and the foul. His driving has been awesome this year. But now we do have to price in the fact that he is typically, not always, but typically in this position, whether he makes it or he doesn't. And that does stress out your defense, especially if he doesn't convert the layup. But you will take it any day of the week because his driving is so elite. And why you can certainly dabble with the two big lineup, but if you get another non-shooter, it does make these drives more crowded. And I would expect that turnover rate to creep up if you're going to be using a two big lineup, whether it's Sims, whether it's Achua, whether it's Mitchell Robinson eventually. Towns as a driver has been a great source of offense, and I would just be very cognizant of not hamstringing that by cramping the space. But it was a really elite performance by the New York Knicks. I think it's their best overall performance of the season. And yes, it was a statement game. I know offensively, the Magic are not a good offense, especially without Banchero, but I thought the Knicks executed the defensive plan as well as you can execute it. They were disciplined and their talent really, really showed through. I thought Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby were all great. I thought Towns in his drop was phenomenal. And I thought Brunson, when he was in, he was making his rotations, he was communicating, thought he did well. And then obviously McBride and Payne, when they came in the game, they add an element of ball pressure and chaos that the starting lineup sort of lacks. So you love that aspect of it. And then, Sims did his thing when he was in the game. It was a complete team effort on the defensive end. And then offensively, to have a 125 or 124 offensive rating against one of the better defenses in the NBA, you have to love that. And as I started with it, the Knicks are now starting to rack up some really good offensive performances against solid to very good to elite defenses. I think you have to take some solace in that, despite the Houston game, the Cleveland game, and some of these, really top defenses that have slowed them down. This is still a new group that is figuring things out, and they are starting to really diversify the offense and just performing at a high level right now. So great win, 13-8 at this point. I think you probably are feeling pretty good after that win. If you're a Knicks fan coming off the first 20 games where I think there was some unease about where this team was, I had some unease. So it's not just, I'm not saying that as if I wasn't also aware of that and feeling that. So it felt good to get that win and to get it in the way they did it. So that'll wrap up this week's film session. Do me a favor, give me a follow on X, DJ Ace NBA. But more importantly, like, subscribe, share, comment. I replied almost every comment in these. Any YouTube comment. I think you guys have done a nice job of providing some. Obviously, everyone wants to hear good feedback, but also like relevant questions, things I didn't cover. So if there's anything that you're wondering about or need clarification on, just reply in the comments. I will be sure to keep track of that and answer any and all of them. So thank you so much for joining. Benji Ritholtz will be back next week for another edition of the Knicks Film School Film Session. Until then, catch you later. Have a great one.